On February 28, 2022, in the small town of Genoa City, Wisconsin, a bizarre incident unfolded that left both the police officers and the local residents in complete disbelief. On what seemed like an ordinary day, as the officers were carrying out their routine patrols, a silver vehicle suddenly sped past them at an astonishing speed, 70 miles per hour in a zone where the speed limit was only 25 miles per hour. The driver was none other than Brittany Anderson, 34 years old, and on that day, she decided to rewrite the traffic rules in her own very unique way. The story of Brittany's thrilling adventure had just begun, marking the start of an unforgettable pursuit in the heart of Genoa City. After passing another car with an impressive burst of speed, Brittany seemed intent on not just showcasing her driving skills, but also executing a move that was nothing short of extraordinary. Instead of stopping like any reasonable driver would, she crashed into 4 parked cars on the sidewalk, creating chaos in her wake. The vehicles were tossed like dominoes, scattered everywhere in a powerful collision. The police, with swift and accurate reactions, immediately signaled for her to stop, but it appeared that Brittany had no intention of paying attention to any warnings or traffic laws. In that moment, it seemed like all she saw was the open road and an opportunity to show off her high-speed driving abilities. She continued to speed forward, showing no signs of slowing down despite the police signaling for her to pull over and calling for backup. The blaring sirens of the police cars seemed like part of a race, yet Brittany couldn't stop thinking that she was in a high-stakes street racing competition, like something straight out of the Fast and Furious movies. In that instant, Brittany was no longer just a driver. She felt like a professional racer, conquering roads and overcoming any obstacles life threw her way. Every turn, every acceleration made her feel like she was living in a Hollywood action film, where all limits could be broken and traffic laws were meaningless. She wasn't just driving, she was the star of an adrenaline-pumping scene, with everything around her serving as the backdrop to her own adventure. The officers trailing behind could only watch in astonishment, wondering, is she training for a marathon? The officer's question, filled with surprise and disbelief, perfectly captured Brittany's attitude in that moment. To her, the dangerous and dramatic situation wasn't a law enforcement pursuit, but rather an endless race where it was just her and the road ahead. Despite the police and their backup efforts trying to surround and stop her, Brittany seemed to view all their attempts as meaningless obstacles that only made the game more exciting. With each breathtaking turn, it was as if she were testing her own driving prowess, speeding past obstacles and leaving behind those trying to regain control of the situation. This wasn't merely an escape. It was a clear demonstration of her indomitable spirit, a fierce determination not to be confined by rules she deemed unreasonable. She wasn't just outrunning the police. She seemed to be proving to herself that no one could stop her. Everything around her blurred into insignificance, except for one singular goal: keep running, keep speeding forward, as if nothing could possibly halt her progress. In that moment, Brittany wasn't just trying to escape the police. She was creating her own racetrack in a world where she alone decided the pace and the course of her journey. Any intervention, whether from the law or the imminent dangers around her, couldn't slow her down, because to Brittany, this wasn't a chase. It was a game, and she was the only one who knew the rules to win. After briefly losing sight of Brittany, tension quickly built up within the police team. Each officer felt a sense of anxiety and began scanning every nook and cranny, as if every street corner and every turn could be where Brittany was hiding. Those silent moments seemed to stretch on forever, and the uncertainty of losing her made the entire team wonder if they had missed their chance to capture her. But suddenly, a glimmer of hope appeared when another officer radioed in that Brittany's silver car had been spotted, continuing to move in a different direction. The officers' spirits were instantly lifted, as if recharged, and they exhaled in relief. However, what surprised everyone was Brittany's reaction when she realized she had been spotted. Instead of panicking or desperately trying to escape, she seemed remarkably calm and unfazed. With no sign of worry, Brittany continued to speed forward as if she were playing a game in which she was the one calling the shots. She appeared completely indifferent to the presence of the police behind her or the clear stop signals they were giving, signals that any normal person would obey. Her actions seemed completely calculated, and in that moment, Brittany wasn't just a lawbreaker. She was the star of a hide-and-seek game, where she was the only one who knew the rules. It can be said that Brittany didn't just see herself as the leader of this pursuit, but rather as the one who controlled the game. Every turn she made, every road she chose, gave her the feeling that she was starring in an action thriller, where she was the lead role, and the police were nothing more than secondary characters. Her overconfidence in this situation didn't just leave the officers baffled, but also made anyone witnessing the scene wonder if Brittany was toying with her own fate. Brittany's sense of excessive confidence became even more apparent as she completely disregarded traffic laws, not just out of impatience, but from an arrogant attitude that she could hardly hide. She didn't view this chase as a typical pursuit, but as an intellectual challenge, a game she set up for herself to see if she could escape the control of law enforcement. Every time the police tried to block her path, she showed no panic or fear. Instead, she exhibited a remarkable calmness, as if she were playing a hide-and-seek game in a world she created, one where the rules no longer mattered, and she alone held the rules of the game. This feeling was so strong that it seemed as if she had started to believe she was the only one who truly understood the game, while the officers were merely pawns in a joke they couldn't control. Each time she eluded their attempts, she smiled to herself, as if winning a battle against a challenger. In that moment, her overconfidence was not just a confrontation with traffic regulations or the power of the law, but a psychological battle where she believed she could control everything and make others chase after her. Her stubbornness wasn't just an ordinary form of resistance, it was a masterful joke she was playing, a play she kept performing for herself. She wasn't just betting on her personal freedom but seeking a more sophisticated victory, not over the authorities, but over herself. The victory, in her eyes, wasn't simply escaping safely, but asserting herself as the one person who could see through the rules that others were trying to follow. She set the boundaries and then broke them on her own. That was the game Brittany was enjoying. Brittany's stubbornness and optimistic naivety formed a fascinating combination, turning this pursuit into not only a tense chase but also a surprisingly humorous situation. While the police were constantly struggling to implement measures to stop her, from using obstacles to dangerous maneuvers like pit moves, Brittany reacted as if all these efforts were mere insignificant challenges, and she was confident she would overcome them. She drove past every obstacle, surpassed the officers as though she were partaking in an extreme sport, where nothing could stop her. Brittany's determination seemed unshakable, as if she were playing a game where she was sure to win, regardless of the unfavorable cards around her. It was as if she were playing the game, keep moving forward, even though the cards had been dealt and all the hands were against her. Her blind belief in herself made the situation both suffocatingly tense and strangely humorous. The police probably didn't know whether to be angry or to admit they were being taunted by a driver who would never submit. After a series of tense and dramatic pursuits, Brittany continued to prove herself as a fearless driver, leaving onlookers in awe. While the officers made every effort to maintain a safe distance and catch up with her, Brittany showed incredible recklessness, unafraid of any barriers. After hitting several obstacles, from parked cars to sudden blockages, she didn't reduce speed but kept pushing forward as if nothing could stop her. This scene reminded people of dramatic action movie sequences, where the main character always overcomes every obstacle without a scratch, despite facing dangerous situations. A police car was trying to close in to block her path, but Brittany wasn't fazed. When the police car got closer, unexpectedly, she charged straight toward an officer standing in front of her. In a heart-stopping moment, the officer barely managed to leap aside to avoid a collision, and if he hadn't reacted quickly, he might not have been able to escape the direct hit from her speeding car. The scene resembled those action films where the characters narrowly escape life-threatening situations, maintaining remarkable composure in moments that decide their fate. It seemed that nothing could stop Brittany, from physical obstacles on the streets to life-threatening dangers that could unfold in a split second. She moved as if she were driving a race car in an intense competition, where every risk could cross into life-or-death territory, yet it didn't make her panic. Brittany's sense of empowerment made all those involved in this pursuit admit that, no matter how dangerous the circumstances, she was like a shadow that could never be caught. With her lightning speed and unwavering determination, Brittany was not merely driving. She was creating a race, one without a professional track, no safety rules, and most importantly, no prize for the winner. For the officers behind her, it felt as if they were watching a thrilling action movie, where the silver car shot past like a missile, blurring everything around it. The police even wondered, is she avoiding a need for speed-style driving competition? Could there really be a race like that in real life? And was Brittany the one testing herself in a dangerous game that only she understood the rules of? Every move Brittany made was like a continuous battle with her own limits, as she dove into challenging curves and overcame every obstacle with unimaginable speed. The sense of freedom she experienced probably wasn't just the thrill of driving, but the joy of not following any rules, with only herself and her car as the only beings in that world. With every powerful acceleration, every sudden turn, Brittany became a legendary character in an intense action movie, where nothing could stand in her way, and every decision, every moment, could determine her survival. Amid the smoke and the roaring engine, she wasn't just driving. She was fighting in a universe filled with risks, where every boundary could be broken. From the perspective of those involved in the chase, everything happened so fast that it seemed almost unbelievable. The officers, despite their best efforts and the numerous support vehicles involved, could only watch as Brittany's car sped by like a whirlwind, leaving behind an entire team struggling to catch up. Their feeling at that moment was like seeing a ghost on the road. They knew the car was there, but they could never get close enough. No matter how many people were involved in this pursuit, they could never catch Brittany, who showed no fear of anything. At this point, Brittany wasn't simply a driver running from the law. She was living in a high-action movie, with herself as the star. Every turn, every dash through an empty street, every time she outwitted the police felt like a tense scene in a film only she could write. The officers didn't feel determined to catch her, but rather completely powerless. They were like supporting characters in Brittany's story, the only task being to try to keep up but failing every time. The reality is that throughout the high-speed chase, no one could spot a trace of fear or anxiety in Brittany's actions. She wasn't just driving, she was savoring the feeling of ultimate freedom, a place where nothing could stop her. She wasn't merely fleeing, she was a warrior, battling the world, and the officers were nothing more than challengers on a road she had decided to own. This chase wasn't just a typical pursuit, it was a contest of skill between someone who dared to risk it all and a determined law enforcement team, with the final outcome, Brittany, the one who emerged victorious. In the end, after a tense chase that drained every ounce of energy, Brittany couldn't keep outrunning the officers. The successful pit maneuver by the police caused her vehicle to spin out of control and come to a halt in a position that left her no escape. Everything seemed to pause for a moment, as the car stopped, no longer representing the woman who was desperately seeking an escape, but a criminal vehicle that had just become the target of an entire team of officers. One of the officers nearby let out a sigh of relief, as if he had just survived a fierce battle, then turned to his colleagues with a humorous smile. "Finally caught her, but I'm not sure if I should ask for her autograph, because she'll definitely be famous as a race car driver." His words echoed as a playful joke, while the tension still hung thick in the air. Despite the successful arrest, Brittany's driving skill and the drama of the chase made even the officers reluctantly admit, albeit sarcastically, that if she hadn't gotten into trouble, Brittany might have become a star in the world of racing, someone all the drivers would admire, in a world where there were no cops. That statement, part recognition of talent, part light-hearted satire, reflected the conflicting emotions of those involved in the pursuit. On one hand, there was joy in winning the tense showdown, but also an acknowledgement that they had faced a formidable opponent, albeit one who wasn't legal. The officers didn't just win, they also had to respect the courage and the skilled driving of someone who turned the chase into an unforgettable journey. After the tense and dramatic chase finally ended, Brittany was caught by the police and forced to stop her car. At this point, she still kept a determined attitude, refusing to reveal her identity, leaving the officers confused and perplexed. One of them even had to wonder aloud, "She can't be some anonymous superhero, right?" This offhand remark reflected the officers' bewilderment and surprise at Brittany's non-cooperative attitude. From the moment she sped away at breakneck speeds to evading countless roadblocks, it had left everyone wondering if she was a heroine straight out of an action movie. After a few minutes of escalating tension, when all efforts to convince her seemed futile, Brittany finally admitted her identity. "I'm Brittany Anderson," she said briefly, yet wearily. However, even though she confirmed her name, the officers still felt puzzled. Throughout the chase, no one knew who she was, and no one recognized the name Brittany Anderson from the local community or any records. This made the whole situation even stranger. How could an ordinary person have caused a whole police team and an entire community to chase after them for an exhausting pursuit, and yet still leave no trace of who she was? Brittany became a big question in everyone's mind. Was she an ordinary woman, or just an imposter playing a role in some mysterious story? When Brittany was arrested and placed in interrogation, she was informed of her rights, including the right to remain silent and to have a lawyer, rights everyone knows are crucial in a criminal investigation. However, during the entire detention process, she remained completely silent, as if participating in a contest of patience. Observing this, one officer thought to himself, "If she can stay silent like this throughout such a grueling and intense chase, then she'd make a great lawyer. She's shown that if needed, she can stay completely silent even when surrounded by a barrage of questions and dangerous situations. Maybe she's not just evading the police on the road. Maybe she's also good at avoiding tough questions in the courtroom." The officers couldn't help but sarcastically think of this possibility, as Brittany maintained her calm, composed demeanor, never uttering a word even in the tensest moments. This not only surprised them but also made them wonder if she had some secret legal expertise they hadn't discovered yet. Perhaps she was preparing for a career in law, or simply an expert in the art of staying silent when trouble strikes. Eventually, after a series of tense and dramatic events, Brittany Anderson faced the serious consequences of her actions. She was charged with fleeing from the police and operating a vehicle while intoxicated, OWI, serious offenses that not only involved traffic violations but also posed significant risks of accidents. Despite having no prior criminal history, Brittany's audacious behavior led to harsh punishment. The court sentenced her to 4 years of probation, with an additional 12 months in jail. This served as a harsh lesson for her and a warning to anyone who might think they could escape legal responsibility. With this sentence, Brittany's life would never be the same. While some might feel she deserved the punishment for her reckless behavior, others might see the incident as a brief moment in her life, where her desire for adventure and freedom overshadowed reason. Nevertheless, this was undoubtedly a major shock to someone who had never been in trouble with the law before. And if Brittany decides to turn her life around in the future, perhaps she'll offer a course on how to make the police chase you for 20 minutes without getting caught, sharing the top tricks and strategies she applied during the grueling pursuit. However, such a course would not be endorsed by authorities, as clearly, evading the law is not a game that anyone should play. Brittany's actions will always serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of gambling with the safety of herself and others, all for a fleeting moment of freedom. The story of Brittany Anderson is not just a thrilling chase but also a serious reminder of the consequences of thoughtless actions and disregard for the law. Although she had no criminal history, Brittany's actions led to a chain of events that were irreversible, from endangering herself to putting others at risk. Impulsive decisions, though they may provide temporary feelings of freedom, will inevitably lead to legal consequences. The lesson to be learned from this story is that in any situation, we must always remain clear-headed and think before acting. Abiding by the law not only helps protect ourselves, but also contributes to the safety of the community. Rash actions, though they may seem enticing in the moment, can lead to unforeseen consequences. Sometimes, just one moment of losing control can change an entire life. Instead of trying to avoid the inevitable, we should face challenges calmly and responsibly, because true freedom only comes when we understand our rights and duties in society.